what if I just figured something out about myself on your show?
I love it.
You're such a good host.
I'm taking this to my therapy this week. Today's guest most recently toured the country in both the national tour of the Prom and Hamilton. Please welcome to the Zoom, Alexa Magro.
Hello.
How are you?
Good to see you.
It is so good to see you. So we always start behind the resume by talking about how we met, and we met very briefly, but I feel like I've known you forever, even though it was a very, very brief meeting. So you were in the national tour of the Prom, and my good friend Zoe, who I grew up doing theater with, was in the Prom with you, and so I went to see her. And then after the show, she introduced me to you. Turns out we have so much in common, and just kept in touch, and now we're here.
We just really hit it off right off the bat.
So let's just start from the very beginning. Where are you from?
Okay, I'm from the Woodlands, Texas. It's a suburb about an hour north of Houston.
How did performing come into your life?
Both of my older sisters were in dance. My mom put me in dance when I was like 2, and then Halloween came around, and this girl showed up in this unicorn costume that freaked me out, and so I quit. And then like a year later, my sister headed to another dance studio, and I was like, okay, I'll try again. And so I went to my first class, and the head of the studio pulled my mom aside, and she was like, I'd like to do a solo for Alexa. And my mom was like, okay. Didn't really know like much about that. And so I did a tap solo, and I started competing at the age of 5. And just kind of like did the dance competition convention circuit for the next 6-7 years.
Were you in traditional school the whole time?
From there, yes. I didn't start online school until 8th grade. When I was 11, I had foot surgery, and I had a genetic deformity in my left foot. And I was immobilized for a year and a half and told I'd never dance again.
What?
And I was supposed to head to New York City that summer to do like the American Ballet Theater ABT, their like young dancers program. I thought maybe I wanted to go the ballet route. And so I was like really into ballet and was dancing at this like pre-professional contemporary ballet company in Houston. Yeah, this surgery kind of put a halt on everything. And as a young child, my dreams were just kind of, swept from under the rug.
So before then, what did you daydream about?
It was always Broadway, always. Like even in dance, like it was always like musical theater. Like that was my favorite style always. I loved like telling stories through my movement. That was just where I found the most joy. And I always like wanted to like take singing and acting lessons, but there wasn't time in the day. And I was so committed to dance.
How were you introduced to Broadway?
I always loved Annie as a kid. Like that was, my go-to film. I lived about an hour from Theater Under the Stars, Tuts, which is a regional theater in Houston. And we just have a really great theater community in the city of Houston. So my family and I would go see shows. We'd get season tickets every year. And so I was seeing these musicals every year, and I saw that they had, I went to see Hairspray, and I saw that they had a school. This Tuts had a training program. Their kids were in these shows with these professionals, and I was like, what? But it was such like a distant dream to me, just because I didn't know how to sing. I didn't know I was in choir. But
do you have siblings?
Yeah, I do. I have 2 older sisters and a little brother.
How did they influence your childhood?
My 2 older sisters, they were in dance when I was little, but even my parents, like, no one's really in the business at all. So they appreciate it. And I always say, like, they're the best balance between, like, being the most supportive family, but also just, like, having no clue about what it entails, which I think is perfect. I didn't grow up with, like, your stage parents. My oldest sister, she's autistic. She was diagnosed later in life. So she's 28. Or I'm sorry, she's 30 now, but she wasn't diagnosed until she was 28. Her entire life, she's been misdiagnosed, which is actually pretty common for women who are on the spectrum. Her struggles throughout my childhood definitely have immensely influenced my art. I've kind of always used dance and theater now as a way to channel, my frustration or whatever I'm feeling, what's happening at home. Because of her and her situation, there's something in my performing that's so incredibly unique. In a way, is always dedicated to her.
Oh, that's beautiful.
She's an incredible artist and poet and writer. We've always talked about somehow integrating the two of our art forms and somehow collaborating and doing something together.
So you're 11 and you're told you're never going to dance again when that was all you could eat, sleep, breathe.
Correct.
What happened next?
Like
Oh my
immediate.
gosh. Yeah.
Like,
Were you in a lot of pain leading up to this?
So badly. Yeah. I went to a few doctors and they kept telling me it was tendonitis. So I just kept dancing on it. And then I was at a dance competition. I finished my solo and my dance teacher literally had to carry me off stage.
Wow.
I mean, this is not tendonitis. So we booked an appointment with an orthopedic sports specialist, and he was like, let me do an x-ray. And he looked at my x-ray, and me and my parents are in the room, and we're and through all this tendonitis stuff, I was getting cortisone injections. They were just trying all of these different things. He looked at my x-ray, and we could immediately tell something was up. He pointed to this little black dot on my x-ray, and he's like, I want to get an MRI. Let's put in an MRI and
Oh my
let's
gosh.
get this moving. So I'm pretty sure I had my MRI the next day, and then they expedited the results, and I went back into him, and he was like, I don't know how you've been dancing. This is crazy. He's like, we got to get you into surgery.
What was going through your head?
I'm terrified. I've never had a surgery or a procedure before. I've never been put to sleep. Shock and seeing the look on my parents' faces, and I'll never forget that moment. But I don't think
You say that's the hardest thing you've ever been through?
Yeah, I would say so. Between that and everything with my sister, that's probably the two things that have influenced every part of my being and so much of who I am as a person and as an artist today. But I think in that moment, it was just I wasn't thinking about the future. I don't think it was immediately I'm not going to be able to dance again, because you see so many athletes have so many surgeries. Yeah. So at that point, I was just okay, I have to do this. And I'd been in so much pain, so I think there was a little bit of relief too. That was okay, we have an answer. This can be something that's fixed. And my doctor was so incredible, and he he was we're going to get you better. And at that time, he was the recovery is going to be about 6 months. So I was okay, I can do 6 months, easy. I had my surgery a few days later. We didn't waste any time. And then those following days after surgery, the pain was unbearable. I can't really take pain meds. My body just doesn't react to it. So I just basically just had to sit and deal with.
You're 11?
When I was 11, yeah. And obviously had to take a break from school too.
Wow.
I will say the one blessing about that time was from kindergarten through 5th grade, I didn't have a social life. I didn't, it was school and the dance. And so that 6th grade year, although I was on crutches or in a wheelchair, in casts or whatever, that was the first time I was really able to hang out with friends outside of school. And I had a really great group of friends, and we would go to the park after school, and on Friday nights we'd do pizza at my house. So I tried to find the silver lining within it.
I'm so sorry that you went through that, but I love what you said about how, the hardships then shape you into who you are. And who knows if you would have the resilience that you have now without having gone through what you've been through.
Absolutely. And I really, I think when I'm on stage, I give 150% every single night because I know what it's like to not be able to get to do the thing that you love. So I
Yeah.
think that shines through when I'm on stage, because I just know that it can be taken from you in an instant. And I'm in the fortunate position where I was able to get it back, and I was able to come back stronger than before. But, a lot of people,
So you're fully healed? You have no pain now?
no pain, fully healed.
Incredible.
Yeah, it took longer than expected. But like during that time, my parents were like, we need to find you something else to do. And they found a theater camp at the school at Tuts, and they put
Wow.
in like a singing and acting class there. And I came out on my first day, and I was like, yeah, like this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And then I went into my rehab with a new mindset. I was dancing 6 months later.
I was just going to ask you, when did the focus shift from dance to theater?
It
But
was
it's because you had that forced break. So do you think, had you not have gone through the injury, you still would have found your way to theater?
maybe not.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
There's a part of me, I'm like, I could have like gone into the ballet world, and chances are I would have been miserable. It's cutthroat. I mean, it's cutthroat here too, but just a whole different world. I know, as cliche as it sounds, everything happens for a reason, and I guess sometimes I don't always believe that, but in this situation, for sure, like, I wouldn't be where I am today without that.
So when you found theater, because you love dance, but was there like a different spark or a different feeling with theater, or you loved it just as much?
One of my mentors once told me, they were like, when you're in a scene and the expression becomes too much to relay with words, and you turn that into song, and then when it's heightened even more, then it turns into dance. Yeah, just the way that you can integrate all three into one was just like such a brilliant concept to me. Even like as a competition dancer, what set me apart in that world was like this innate ability that I was just born with, that like I understood, like no matter what, whenever somebody would give me a combo or like any kind of movement, I automatically was able to like put an intention behind I was like, why is my arm going up? Like, what's the reason for that? Like, I would like create these stories in my head. So I think I was always like an actor. And so when I got into my first acting class, and then I, started doing musicals, and I was putting all three together, it was just like this like light bulb went off, and everything just like made sense.
And did that just change the course of your life?
Yeah. 1000%.
Wow. So you finished middle school.
So I started dancing after like 6 months later after that camp. And then I auditioned for the academy at this school at Tuts as soon as I could start dancing again. And when I got into the academy, I switched to online school. So that was going to be my 8th grade year. And my parents were like super against the whole homeschooling thing, but I like made this 2-hour PowerPoint presentation. I was like, listen, these are all the reasons why I need to be homeschooled. And they were like, okay, we'll try it for 8th grade. And then if it doesn't work, like, you're going back to school. And throughout
yeah, I begged all of 8th grade to switch to online school. My parents also, it took a very long time I understand though. I mean, I totally understand. I think when it's your choice versus when it's forced, it's completely different. But I mean, it was the best thing for me. Did you love it?
The best thing that ever happened to me. I say the same thing.
Yeah.
So then, I had booked my first regional show like 2 months after I like got into the academy, and I did Elf.
How old were you?
I was 13.
Okay. So you were in the kids program at Tuts.
Yeah.
Then you got to audition to be part of the main stage shows.
Yeah, it's like the same.
It's like the exact, And so Zoe, that's what we grew up doing together at Cabrillo Music Theater, and we actually, both of our first show there was Children of Eden. I think I was 14, maybe she was 14 or 15, and then we actually went to school together. So such parallel lives. It's crazy.
It's wild, and I love that there's so many programs like around the country that have that.
Oh my God.
There's no experience like that, getting to be a young artist in these room within a room with these professionals. Like,
oh my gosh,
the greatest education,
the greatest experience of my life. And then how many shows did you do with Tuts on the main stage?
17.
What?
So that was, yeah.
17?
So that was from 8th grade to 12th grade.
So you didn't show like every season?
Oh yeah, multiple shows. I mean, pretty much back to back. From
And you just got into everyone? You're like, yep. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that was my life. You know, I'd rehearse 9 to 5 with the adults every day, and then I'd do my schoolwork on the breaks, and then
Like
after, yeah, that was just like, that was what I was doing, and for all of my high school years. And then I ended up graduating, I guess, like a semester early, and I think they put me on my first contract when I was 16 there. And then yeah, I was working from 16 through the end of high school.
What was your favorite show out of the billions?
I think we talked about this, but I think it's Memphis.
Oh, right. Oh my gosh, we need to talk about this. Wait, can you share for the people? Because I love the story. Also, wait, do I have a Memphis thing up here? Not yet. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna add a photo.
Memphis, yeah, Memphis. I think Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Memphis was my first like contracted show. So I felt like I was like taking a step up.
That show though,
I was like the only like young person in it, like child.
The best.
So it just felt really, really special.
It's crazy to me how much we have in common. I know we talked about this, but Memphis was the first. So I saw Memphis at Cabrera Music Theater before I was like in any of the main stage shows. I was like 12. And
I told Zoe about this, and she was like, I remember.
Oh no, I'm telling you, like I literally went to the cast party. Like I somehow got myself into the cast party, and the entire cast like knew that I was obsessed. I saw the show 9 times because we were performing like before the show started, and we got to see the show for free. And so I saw it every single time they did it. And it was the first time that I saw a musical that was that like the story was so impactful. I think before I had just seen musicals that were a little more like not surface level, but just not as, educational and impactful. And I was like, whoa, theater can do that, I think that's what did it for me. But the director of the company at the time, he would then call it I love this so much, he would call it your Memphis moment when you see a show and have that feeling of like theater is magic. And so I love that Memphis is special to you as well, because it's not a super popular musical.
It's not. Contrary to popular belief too, I prefer it to Hairspray. But
oh yeah, totally.
Similar vibe, but I've always preferred Memphis. And the soundtrack, the music
so
is
good.
It's so good.
It's amazing.
Yeah, if you guys don't know Memphis, take a listen, because you'll have a Memphis moment too, guaranteed.
Oh, when did you get involved with the special needs work?
Tuts, they have a parallel program that's also, it's part of Tuts, and it's called the River for the Performing and Visual Art. And so the kids at the academy at Tuts also have the opportunity to volunteer at this program. The River for the Performing and Visual Arts is a special needs arts training program. And actually, since I've left, they now allow the students from that program to also audition for one main stage show a year.
Wow.
So the kids in this program are also getting to be in these main stage regional shows with these Broadway performers.
That's incredible.
Just incredible.
Yeah.
I guess the transition kind of happened my senior year, so I did get to do one show with a few of them. And seeing their faces on that stage every night. I mean, Seraphim Hall is the big theater at the Hobby Center in Houston. We've got 2,800 seats. And seeing these kids get to like live their dreams that, they probably never thought that they would have the opportunity to do was just beautiful. But pretty quickly when I got involved at Tuts, did I like immediately shift over to that program as well, because I just like felt this connection. So I started volunteering there, and they have a performance troupe where they have kids from the Humphrey School of Musical Theater, where I was at, and the River, and they have a performance troupe together, and then they go around Houston and they perform at galas, and we sang at a Texans game. And so I was, part of the performance troupe there. And then when I was 16, I started working there, like in the summers at their camps. And I met one of my best friends, Sebastian. He has cerebral palsy, and we had met there when I was 13. He's pretty much flown out or, driven to see all of my shows. He's one of my closest friends, him and his mama. We went to homecoming together. But yeah, just an amazing community of young individuals that are so talented and just have the most incredible hearts.
Did you start to think about college or a long-term career, and were those thoughts overwhelming?
Yes. I think especially like junior and senior year, we actually had Dave Clemens was our college prep coach, and we had classes at the academy that were basically, helping you figure out which schools to go to and pre-screens. And this was all, set for whoever wanted to go to school for musical theater. Right off the bat, I was like, I without a doubt, like, no, I want to do this for a living. But I was like, I've just spent my entire high school years doing this professionally. In my last few years, the people that I would do the shows with, I would pick their brains about where they went to school and what they did. And it was always like half and half. Like, I went to school for musical theater. I didn't go to school at all. Or like, I went to school for something else. Or, everyone had a completely different path. Just being surrounded in a community of other students who were going to school for musical theater, I just kind of felt like that's just what you do. But I never felt really excited about it. And I always like beat myself up for that, because I was like, everyone else like is seeming so excited to like, get all of their stuff together, and they like have a school that they really want to go to, or like their top 5 schools. And I was just like, always like, ugh, I don't know. Like, I know I want to go to school. I want to get an education. That's important to me. But I was like, I really want to be on Broadway. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to move to New York and be on Broadway. I would spend the summers every year in New York, about like a month every year, doing these Broadway junior choreography DVDs with iTheatrics and Music Theater International, who license all shows. Yeah, they would get this group of high school kids together, and we would basically like stage a show and then record it, and they send out these DVDs to these schools who are doing the shows as like a guide on.
Yeah, I've seen them.
So I'm on like 20 plus of those.
That's so funny.
Now I actually think there's like a database online where you can just access them, because no one has DVDs anymore. Wow, I felt so old saying that. That's so weird. I feel like I'm always around older people and they're like, oh, you don't know.
Yeah.
Yes, I know what a DVD is. I was doing Memphis at the time. And I remember like, I was like, okay, I'm going to go through with this. Like, I'm going to do this musical theater thing. And so I went all of like the Unifieds. They'd send me the choreography from Memphis, and I'd like learn it on the plane as I'm like getting ready to go do this college audition. All of my thoughts were like in the show, and I really wasn't focused on my auditions, which probably wasn't great.
Were your parents encouraging you to go to school for musical theater?
They encouraged school for sure. They've always been like, we just want you to do what makes you happy. In their minds as well, it's like, if you're going to do this for a living, then you should go to school for it, right? But we were like, let's just try and see what happens. My parents were like, audition, like you can make the decision later. So I auditioned for the schools, toured a few schools, decided that I was going to go to Otterbein University, which is in Westerville, Ohio. It's a super small program, and I wanted a program that was small and that had an acting focus. And I was also able to get a dance minor there.
Was the unified process crazy?
Because I was in rehearsals, I never like went to, typically people will go to like one Unified and do all of their auditions in like a few days.
Yeah.
Because my rehearsal schedule was so crazy, I kind of had to like make my own schedule. So I had to go to the New York one, the Chicago one.
Oh my gosh.
But for like a day each. It was such like a weird experience. There's nothing like it. Like going into these hotels where they like take the beds out, and like all of these schools, like you go into like a hotel room, and it's just like
so bizarre.
It's so weird, and every school wants something different. But yeah, I think I kind of like just like went on autopilot. But yeah, again, I wasn't too excited about it, but I was like, I think this is what I have to do. So then I decided to go to Otterbein, and I like moved in. I was excited. I was going away from home for the first time. Like, that's exciting. But I was also like, okay, here we go. Still just like a little bit uneasy. And then 2 weeks in, I was like, actually probably like a day in, but I gave myself 2 weeks. I was like, this is not it.
Really?
This is not for me. My heart, this is not where my heart is.
What about it?
I think, and I will say, like, nothing against the program. I think it probably would have been the same at any program. I felt like the joy was sucked out of it for me. Doing everything for an assignment and for a grade, just, I mean, completely took all of the joy out of me. A multitude of reasons, but I think like that was probably the main one. And just like the schedules of these, I mean, so much respect to anyone who has done it, because it's just like, we had 8 a.m. dance every day. And then especially freshman year, we're in class from 8 to 4. And then you've got sometimes not even a meal break. You will, have maybe an hour, and then you'll go to rehearsal from 5 to 11, which I was used to as a kid, but it was just different. And then you would have your tech theater requirements after that, especially as a freshman. So, we'd be dressing for a show and then doing the laundry at the end of the show, but the washers and dryers didn't work. So we're like hand wringing out the clothes till 2 a.m. and then have to be back up for 8 a.m. And I was getting sick, and my body was crashing. I learned better through experience. And because I had been doing the thing for so many years, I was like, I want to continue doing the thing. I did promise my parents a year. So I went home for the holidays, and it took everything in me to go back. But I knew I needed to stick it out a year, and then we'd reevaluate. I think it was really important for my parents, for me to go to school, to a physical school. They wanted me to be a kid for a second. They were like, you need to go to a party. Like, you need to hang around kids your own age. Because I had been in these shows with these adults for years, and I had social anxiety around kids my age. And I think
I still do.
Yeah, I as well.
Going to school for a year, did you like going to parties and being around kids your own age?
No, I did it once, and then I was like, okay, I did it. Can I come home
Check
now? You're like, pass the test. Hated it.
Yeah.
Hated it. It's just
I
not for
just
me.
think everyone's different.
Everyone's different. It was not for me then. It's still not for me now. I'm still not, there's so many young people in the city partying all the time. It's just not for me. I should probably relax a little bit, but I'm very go, work.
I don't think there's anything, I don't think you should be shamed for, I hate to say being ambitious, but everyone's different, and some people just don't thrive in that environment. And I'm the same as you, and I'm like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. I don't think so either. It feels isolating at times for sure, but I'm finding my own way.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what works for me. But I ended up leaving school 2 months early because I booked West Side Story at the Lyric Opera of Chicago. And so I got an excuse to leave. And the school was so wonderful. They let me finish out the last 2 months as I don't want to say study abroad, but they let me use the show as to get my credit hours.
Wow, amazing.
So I did get to finish my freshman year, which was really great. And I spent a few months in Chicago doing this show with the most amazing cast ever. I loved that company so much. I was living in the West Loop in Chicago in a 1-bedroom apartment. Just turned 19, and I'm like, what is my life? Loved that contract. But during that time, I was like, I'm gonna move to New York. That's what I'm gonna do. It's gonna happen.
Did you have representation at this point?
Nope, not at this point. I got that audition because I knew Julio Monge, who is he was Jerome Robbins' right hand, and I had worked with him before, and he was restaging this West Side Story. So he's the one that called me, and that's how I ended up getting the audition.
Wow. Who did you play?
Anybody's.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
I love her so much.
What would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
By my dad, the 5 Ps. Preparation prevents piss poor performance.
What?
Preparation above all.
Right.
If you're prepared, you're unstoppable.
What do you think is the worst piece of advice you've been given? Jay Shetty asks his guests this. I don't know if you listen to his podcast.
Don't. Worst piece.
His podcast is called On Purpose, but he's amazing. And I've never thought about that. And I think I'm always interested
I've never thought about it.
Or maybe like, have you ever, I mean, I'm sure every person has in their own way, but have you ever known in your heart that like there's a path that you want to take that maybe is unconventional, and you're hearing voices that mean well but aren't really supportive of you following that path?
1,000%. I mean, I think that was my whole, like, college audition process. I think, like, I knew in my heart what I wanted the whole time, what was going to be best for me. And ultimately, like, I made the decision to follow my gut and take my own path. Creating your own path is so important, because there's this conventional one that's so easy to slide into, especially like in our society where we've got social media and we can see what everybody else is doing. It's so easy to like fall in and feel like you have to take this certain path to get where you want to go, but it's just not the case. What's for you won't pass you by.
Mm-hmm.
So I leave. I close the run in Chicago, and then I come home, for a little bit, and I'm like, I'm gonna move to New York, and my parents are like, okay.
Wow.
Okay.
This is pre-pandemic, right?
Pre-pandemic. This is 2019.
Uh-huh. Crazy.
19. And yeah, so I came home. I guess the show closed in June. I came home for July. I moved at the end of August.
Mm-hmm.
Found a sublet, and it was a sublet in Hell's Kitchen with a very good friend of mine to this day. It's like 50 square feet, a box. I built a dresser, cardboard boxes, 5-floor walk up, no window, a bed on wheels, like your classic, like first New York City apartment.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was doing, but I was like, okay, I'm going to do
like
this.
The start of being Annie, getting off the plane with your bags.
Truly. And yeah, my parents were like, what are you going to do about school? And I was like, I'm already on it. I found this program at the University of Arizona online. It's an interdisciplinary studies program. We're fully online, and I can work at my own pace, and I can get a bachelor's in interdisciplinary studies and pick a focus. And I picked arts, media, and entertainment. But basically it was like create your own major, so I could take classes in anything I wanted. I took a lot of focus classes, nutritional science and psychology and all these different things. So I found this program, and I was like, here, already got in. I had like already done it all.
Yeah.
I had already taken care of it all. And they were like, okay, let's do it. And so
wow.
I moved to New York in August. I had already, like, in that month that I was home, submitted to a few agencies. So I had already like had 4 meetings lined up. My first week got to New York. I don't know. I just like to be ahead on things.
I admire that so much about you. I think I don't even know if you realize how inspiring that is and how like incredible you are, but to leave the traditional path, to move to New York at 19, and to already have like taken care of school and have the meetings, like that's incredible.
Thank you.
Do you recognize that?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I know that I've worked really hard to get to where I am. And I know a lot of it also does come down to, just like being in the right place at the right time. And kindness is another huge component that I think people often neglect and don't realize is so important. Just being kind to people. It's like one of my advice is like, just be kind. It goes such a long way, especially in a cutthroat business like this. I do recognize that. I think a part of me is always striving for more. I'm never like fully pleased with myself. No, I do. Yeah. I'm proud of myself. I am.
Oh,
it's taken a lot. It's taken a lot to get to this point. And when I look back at little Lex, who is like sitting in that doctor's office, like just like feeling so defeated, and destroyed in every way. I've definitely
made her proud.
Yeah.
If she could see you now, what do you think she would say?
Thank you. How? I think she'd be very, like, very one-worded short. She'd be so speechless that she'd be like, thank you. How? Why? Who, what, when, where, why? I think there'd be a lot of tears. I'm a crier, so she probably wouldn't even be able to get any words out because she'd be crying, happy tears. My sister often, she gets confused why someone would cry when they're happy. So when I cry, she always has to ask my mom. She's like, "Are these the happy ones or the sad ones?" So we usually have to clarify.
That's funny.
Yeah, because tears go with sadness, so we just have to. But not for me. Tears go with everything. So that was off topic,
but so you get to New York, you have meetings, and did things just start picking up from there?
They do, yeah. So I had my meetings that first week. I was in school full time online. I had my meetings. I ended up signing with someone that week, I guess.
Wow.
And then I got an audition for a co-star on this show called Evil, and I auditioned for that, and I got it. And that was right off the bat, and I was like, "This is great!" And I did that one day of work. It was on. I think we shot on Halloween.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, and then after that, it was like obviously just nothing. I mean. I was auditioning and getting the no's. And
did you go to open calls a lot?
Not too many, because I was AGMA, which is the opera union, but I wasn't equity. I was non-union, so because I had an agent, I didn't have to go and sit for hours at 6 a.m. I can't even imagine, and I'm so much respect to all of these actors. So many of my close friends that do it, are up at 4 a.m. and wait, and then may not even get seen. It's crazy out here. And I do realize how fortunate I am as an actor to even we have to remember sometimes, when we don't get a booking or something, how lucky we are to just get an appointment to get in the room because it's so rare. But yeah, it was mostly appointments. I honestly wasn't going in for too many musicals those first few months. It was more kind of TV film stuff, but it was also the holidays, so things were kind of slow. So then I went home for the holidays, went back in January, things started picking up. I felt like I was starting to get in some rooms and build relationships, and then March came and 2020 and the pandemic hit, and I moved home. I packed contacts for 2 weeks, and I ended up we couldn't get on a flight. So my dad and I drove up to New York from Texas and moved all of my stuff out. I sat in my apartment and just cried. I didn't know when I was back, and moved all of my stuff home. And I was home from, I guess, March 2020 to fall 2021. And I think, that was a difficult time for me, like it was for most people. But I definitely tried to find a silver lining in that. And that's when I was able to get into voiceover.
Oh my God.
Voiceover actually ended up, when I moved back to the city post-pandemic, ended up being my bread and butter in the way that I was able to pay my rent.
Wow.
So if it wasn't for the pandemic, again, I wouldn't have found that. And now it's such a big part of my life, and I love it so much. And it's something that I want to, continue to, work my way up in. Yeah, so I spent my time over the pandemic going to school and doing this voiceover thing, which I didn't know anything about, but I had a coach, and then I listened to a bunch of podcasts, and that was where I got my voiceover education. And I ended up signing with a voiceover agent over the pandemic, who also ended up signing me for everything because my other agency over the pandemic just kind of dropped a bunch of people. I ended up signing with the agent that I'm with now. Again, the first voiceover that I auditioned for, I booked that too. And I was like, oh, Right. And then over the pandemic, because voiceover was the only thing that was happening, I was getting like 14 auditions a week. So I booked that first one, and then I did 100 more and didn't.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Right place, right time. Just got lucky. Yeah. So that was how I spent my pandemic, and then I moved back to the city. 2021, moved back to the city in the fall. Moved in with my like 2 childhood best friends from Tuts.
Oh.
Happened to both be in the city as well. Did the auditioning thing, and then holidays when I went back home again. And then in February, I booked the prom.
Was it frustrating, the audition process, or you knew that just like it was just a matter of time?
The no's are definitely, because I think in Houston, I was a big fish in a small pond, and then you come to New York and you're a small fish in a big pond.
Mm.
But I think it was more motivating than frustrating to me, like, and just exciting, because like in my heart I'm like, I know I can do this, like I know I'm supposed to be, like I've worked my whole life for this and given up school for musical theater for this, and it just felt right. Like I just knew in my heart. So like, yes, like of course there's like a few no's, especially when you get like really really close, that hit hard. And there was one right before the prom, a really big no, that I thought I was going to get, and it was going to change my life. That was like the first time that I was like, maybe I can't handle this.
I had a no that was the hardest no I've ever had to deal with before I booked the prom as well. So like, I don't know, there's something to that. Something to
It's
that.
so weird. That is so weird.
And that's
Yeah,
a
but
story I'll have to tell you one day.
If the big no happened right before everything happened for me last time, then maybe it's gonna be the same pattern this time. I think I like had a couple no's leading up to that one, that weren't as big, but each one is like,
Yeah.
the gut. And no one can, no school or no person can prepare you for how hard it's going to be.
No, it's like heartbreak.
It's heartbreak.
Yeah.
It is actually heartbreak. Especially when you prepare, you put everything you have into an audition. Because my whole audition story for the prom, I didn't actually audition for the prom.
Right.
And I think it was work that I did in other rooms. My preparation. That casting had seen over time, and then right place, right time.
So you auditioned for Mean Girls, and then ended up booking the prom. That is just wild.
Mean Girls, and then like Hamilton simultaneously. It's all 3 the same casting director, who I basically like owe my entire career to up to this point. Bethany Knox.
Oh. Wait, when you were auditioning for Mean Girls, that was kind of your audition for Hamilton as well?
Hamilton was separate, but like it all happened at the same time. Like I was in for Gretchen for Mean Girls, and then I like got to the final, didn't get it, went to an open call for Hamilton the next day, came out of the Hamilton dance call with a text from my agent that was like, hey, they want to see you back in for Mean Girls for an ensemble track Janice cover. Because at that point, when they saw me dance in Hamilton, they didn't know that I could dance, because I had just been in for Gretchen this whole time. So they didn't even know that I could dance. Like they'd seen Hamilton, they were like, oh, she could do an ensemble in Mean Girls. So then like I went through the whole week of Hamilton auditions, went to the Mean Girls callback for ensemble Janice cover the next week, then booked the prom from that, then booked Hamilton boot camp the next day after that. So it all just like, again, right place, right time. Like
wait,
hard
so you
work.
booked the prom and the next day you're in the Hamilton boot camp?
I booked the prom. The next day I got noticed that I was doing the Hamilton boot camp, which just happened to fall on our layoff for the prom. So Zoe and I were going to learn the prom. We learned 13 hours, and then we had our put in, and then we had a month off. And then we weren't going to debut until the next month. So we learned the show, and then my dad came up and drove me to New York overnight. So our first week of our layoff, I did Hamilton boot camp, which is basically like a paid week-long intensive where they teach you a portion of the show, and then the creatives come and watch, and then you just kind of get put into a pool and wait for maybe a spot to open up. You may book it, you may not.
Like so difficult, or was it so much fun, or both?
So difficult, so much fun. I had also like, I was just exhausted. Yeah, I just learned the prom.
Yeah.
Like, that's fine too. It was like, it was wild, but I was on a high.
Oh my gosh, that's
I cannot believe I had made it that far in the audition process to like be in a room with the creatives, like getting to learn a piece of Hamilton. Like Hamilton was, I'm obsessed with Hamilton.
I mean, it's the best. So you did that, and then you do the prom, and you just get the call for Hamilton, or did you do audition again?
So then, so I did the prom. So I finished my boot camp, debuted in the prom, did 6 months of the prom. A week before the prom closed, to get a call that I'm joining Hamilton. But it's gonna like happen the next day. So we closed the prom on October 2nd. I fly to October 3rd for my fittings, and then to Costa Mesa on the 4th to start Hamilton rehearsal.
Did they know that you were in the prom?
Yeah, it's all the same casting director.
So they knew that, like, they knew your timing and everything.
They knew the timing, but like it just so happened that like I was replacing someone who just happened to be leaving when I was like just finishing prom. Like it was just
that's
perfect timing.
At the end of the prom, were you kind of like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do next?
1,000%. Zoe will tell you, like the month I was like, I'm pretty sure I was like crying to her, and I was like, I don't want to be done with tour. Like 6 months wasn't long enough. And like,
did you love it?
I loved it. The prom was amazing, and I met my best friend. She was like, something's gonna pull through, something's gonna work out, like because she was going back to school. She had
in the back of your head, was Hamilton like there?
Yes. I was like, when are they gonna call?
I'm ready.
I want to do Hamilton. I don't know what to do. I don't really want to move back to New York, because like when I was there before I booked the prom, I think it was like, post-pandemic, but still like in the pandemic, and I was doing voiceover, I was doing school, I was doing self-takes all from my apartment. So like I wasn't like getting the New York City experience. Right. I was just living in a tiny apartment.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't really want to go back to New York, but I don't want to go home. So like, what am I going to do? Stressing. And then I was like, but I want to like enjoy our last month here. I'm just thinking about the next thing. We had our last city for the prom. We had, I guess, where were we? Kansas City, maybe. And then we had a week off, and then we were going back to Buffalo to close. So I'm on the flight home from the prom, like for my week layoff, and I like get a bail check for Hamilton.
I have chills. Oh my gosh.
My agent's like, so you're gonna need your grass skirt because you're going to Hawaii.
Oh my gosh.
She's like, well, we'll see. And then that night I get home at 1 o'clock in the morning. She calls me and she's like, okay, confirmed, we're going to Hawaii.
So you didn't have like another audition, and this was like a year, 6 months later?
Mm-hmm. 6 months later. Yeah. No, I think, the Hamilton like audition process, you go in for like a week where you do a bunch of different ones, and then you have a work session. Boot camp, like after boot camp, you don't really audition. Like there's not really anything else that they need to see after boot camp, because you learn like a portion of the show. They like assign you a track, you learn the vocals for it, you stage, like you do like a portion of the show.
Wow.
So I don't know if there's anyone who's like gone through the boot camp process and then like gone back into auditions, I think it's just like a matter of time waiting to see if a spot opens. And like, I think in boot camp they decide whether they want you or not. But
what was the biggest difference between touring with the prom and touring with Hamilton?
I would say the two major differences would be like the difference between being a swing and an onstage company member. And then the prom was a much like younger group, and Hamilton was much older people who've been doing this show for like 5 years. It's a well-oiled machine. Like they go to work, like it feels very much like a job. Like we go to work, we go home, we've got our kids, we've got our partners. Whereas like with prom, it was like, we were going on outings and like doing things as a cast. So just different vibes as far as that goes.
For Hamilton, you were a swing. So how many tracks did you cover?
5 tracks.
Okay, so all the ensemble women?
All the ensemble women, yes. And then
had you ever swung before?
Never swung before. I think that's part of boot camp. Is I think a lot of the people that go through boot camp end up getting cast as swings.
Mm-hmm.
I think they really like look for swings in boot camp, just because you have to learn it so quickly and then kind of just jump in.
Did you love being a swing?
Mixed feelings, mixed feelings. Would I swing again? I think I'd swing. I don't know if I'd swing on tour again, unless it's for Hamilton and it's for like just like intermittent like emergency coverage. Like I just did. I went a few weeks ago to Chicago and helped them out for a few weeks, which also the tracking is completely different in every company. So it was basically like learning different tracks with no rehearsal. It was wild. Being on tour, at least for me, I'm such like a scheduled person. And that is one thing about tour that's like I've become so much more flexible, which has been a blessing because I really like that was something I really struggled with, was just like flexibility in my daily life. So I've really grown as a person on tour, but I think being on tour, you crave some sort of stability and predictability throughout your day because there's just so much that's not familiar in your surroundings.
Right.
And with being a swing, there's even more that you can't control. It was really hard for me to not like know that I was going to go to the theater and do this show 8 times a week. And like, there was, I wouldn't know until an hour before. And
right.
Sometimes during the show, and it was just like always kind of like having to like be ready, which is great, but it was exhausting. And then I would also just get really, really sad when I wasn't on stage. So like if there was a week where I was doing all 5 tracks in 1 week, I like those were my favorite weeks. And then there'd be a week where I would do 0 shows and like sit in the dressing room and cry. I think if I was doing it stationary, like in New York, I could, I'd have my people around me. I could like still have a life and, go to my own gym and my own grocery store and see my friends that are here. And it's really hard on the road.
Wow.
But I learned so much and I have grown so much as an artist and as a person. And I will never see a piece of theater the same again. And just like being able to like know a show from literally every possible angle and know where every person is at all times is just like a crazy like superhero feeling.
So you finished your contract with Hamilton, but now they'll kind of like ask you to come in and help here and there. What is like the ideal next job, or are you just trying to like breathe for a second?
Well, trying to breathe for a second a little bit, but I'm not good at breathing and resting. So I'm like fighting between the balance of that. The transition like back to the city has been really difficult just because tour is like a fantasy land and then being back in like the real world is challenging. But I am trying to rest a little bit and just kind of reset and, see friends I haven't seen in a long time. But I'm actively auditioning and we shall see what happens. The Broadway debut is the goal for me still. I'm open to touring again, depending on what that is. And I definitely want to like break into the TV film industry. And then I want to voice like Disney and Nick Jr. animated shows. Just don't want to limit myself. Want to do it all.
You've mentioned in other interviews that like the special needs work is important to you. And so what are your dreams with that?
Yeah, I think one day I would love to open a program of my own, whether that be here in the city. I mean, I know there are some that exist. So I think there's things that I have to kind of figure out, that set mine apart and make mine unique. But I know you also have dreams about doing similar things. And we've talked about,
we'll do it together.
Who knows what'll happen with that. But I'm so passionate about accessibility in the arts. And I hope that I can offer that to young students like it was where I was in Houston. So yeah, that's another dream for me. I want to write a book one day,
all the things. What do you feel has been your biggest internal struggle or battle throughout your life?
Patience. I really struggle with patience. I think I'm really patient with other people, but I'm not patient with myself. And that's like something even like it's proving to be even more of a struggle for me as I'm getting older. And it's a work in progress for sure.
This conversation's been so wonderful. You're amazing.
Oh,
And
you're amazing.
I'm so glad that we met, and I know that somehow our paths will actually, you know, cross, whether it's through a show or doing
Absolutely.
something with the special needs community. But I always end on this question. It's my favorite question. What do you want your legacy to be?
Like, what legacy?
Yeah, right.
Ooh, that's a complex question. I think I want to be remembered as the girl who turned adversity into opportunity and use my love and my passion for this art form, as well as just who I exhibit as a human being in daily life, to inspire other people to pursue their dreams, even if they're told that they can't do something. Because you can.
And you're proof of that. Amazing. Thank you, Alexa. This has been so wonderful.
Thank you so much. So great talking to you.